A cold glint shined from Han Li's eyes, and he suddenly shook his hands, shooting a bolt of lightning towards the golden net. Countless arcs of lightning began to spark from the net upon impact, causing it to instantly constrict. Then, each of the black threads collided against the golden lightning. With a huge flash, the golden lightning turned the black threads of chi into ash, each burned thread accompanied by a wretched and tragic scream. Soon, the remaining black threads returned towards the center of the golden net, condensing into a glossy black demon nascent. Its face was filled to the brim with fear. It opened its mouth and spat out clouds and clouds pitch black yin chi. They quickly wrapped around it in layers in an attempt to prevent the divine devil-bane lightning from approaching any closer to its body. Han Li's face was expressionless apart from the sneer that momentarily appeared. From his hand, he shot a bolt of lightning so dazzling and bright it was difficult to see and enveloped the demon nascent. Yet another miserable shriek soon followed and the rolls of thunder quieted down, leaving only silence for a short while. When Han Li saw this, he inwardly sighed with relief before retracting his remaining lightning and taking a pitch-black storage pouch into his hand. He then raised his head and expressionlessly swept his gaze past the spell warriors up above. Then with azure light shining from his body, he flew back down towards the Heavenly South cultivators. After an exchange of a few brief words, Han Li exterminated his opponent with divine devil-bane lightning with unbelievable speed. Not only were the Heavenly South cultivators dumbfounded, the Mulan spell warriors completely shaken with disbelief. While the Heavenly South cultivators didn't know about the finer details of the black-robed figure, they had a general idea. These mysterious cultivators should have arrived at the Mulan plains from a great continent. Although they didn't know why these cultivators suddenly appeared at the Mulan plains, they reached some sort of agreement with the 3 divine sages of the Mulan tribes. And it was clear to see that these cultivators had abilities far beyond cultivators of a similar grade before the true war even started. 2 Heavenly South nascent soul cultivators had perished one after another, earning the confidence of these 2 Mulan sages. As for why the black-robed figure participated in the second battle, it was because he felt that there were too many nascent soul stage cultivators that were guarding the grand formation, and he felt it best to first exterminate one while he could. But who could have known that this ordinary-appearing youth would actually be able to kill the black-robed figure with ease? Not even his nascent soul was able to escape, much to the shock of the 2 spell warriors. When the shriveled spell warrior and Ku Yao regained clarity of mind, he glanced at each other with terror and hesitated for a moment, not knowing whether or not they should continue the battle or deal with the uproar of the spell warriors behind them. But at that moment, they suddenly heard a faint, nearly inaudible voice speak in their ear. "Retreat for now. Our momentum has already died. Let us further consider our plans tomorrow. When that time comes, that formation may already be, hee. While Heavenweep's death will be inconvenient, I'll personally explain the matter to the divine sages." The voice sounded neutral in tone, but the words carried an unmistakable air of command. The shriveled man, the Ku Yao, were stunned for a moment upon hearing the voice, but they soon complied with their orders and began to give commands to the spell warriors under their command. With some disturbance, the army made an about-face and slowly retreated. The 2 sages naturally brought up the rear, gloomily watching the cultivators as they retreated. They glared at in particularly Han Li before flying off. Jiyu Shuangpu watched the spell warrior army retreat and doubtfully asked, "Should we pursue them?" "Leave them be." The bald man shook his head and said, "Although they're retreating, they still haven't been defeated. If we were to pursue them, we could find ourselves surrounded. Also, we have to guard the grand formation. It'll be best if we nurtured our strength and bide our time. Our Yellow Dragon Mountain's Thousand Sound Form formation isn't easily broken. If the Mulan wish to seize it, they will need to double their forces at the very least." After that was said, the bald man couldn't help but turn his eyes towards Han Li. Due to the surprise of Han Li managing to kill the black-robed cultivator, the cultivators found themselves in an awkward silence, all at a loss of what to say. As of current, Han Li was wearing a faint smile as he fiddled with a black storage pouch in his hands. Originally, Han Li's faint smiles hardly inspired any feelings in these cultivators. But after he managed to kill a nascent soul cultivator, Han Li's smile now gave them a profound and odd feeling, not to mention that their original contempt for him was now completely gone. The bald man smiled and said, "Fellow Daoist Han, congratulations on slaying a high-grade spell warrior. I will be certain to inform the 9 Nations Alliance of your achievement. They will most definitely reward you greatly." Old Man Ma and Jiyu Shuangpu also congratulated him with a smile. However, Han Li's expression still remained as subtle as before, despite the faint admiration and respect their tones held. As if ignoring this, Han Li simply exchanged a few courteous pleasantries with them as his gaze unconsciously wandered to one of them in particular. When nobody noticed this, he couldn't help but wear an indistinct smirk. Once the spell warrior army disappeared from sight, the bald man opened a passageway into the mist down below and the party hastily disappeared from sight, the mist closing its entrance soon afterwards. Now, the surroundings of the Yellow Dragon Mountains grew peaceful once more. When Han Li and company returned to the hall, they had a quick discussion about the battles that occurred today before returning to their own residences to rest. Old Man Ma in particular not only had his treasure destroyed, but his vitality had greatly suffered as well. He was in dire need to rest and recover. Thus in the blink of an eye, only the bald man remained in the hall. He sat in the main building and lowered his head, his mind lost in thought. A short moment later, he suddenly raised his eyebrow and a strange expression appeared on his face. He softly shouted, "Who is there? Come out." Then with a flash of light, another person appeared in the hall. He. Brother Lu's abilities are truly profound. Just as I entered, he was able to perceive me. It is not wonder why the Nine Nations Alliance had you guard the formation alone. The bald man frowned and wore a strange expression. You? Why aren't you resting? Why did you come back stealthily? It's nothing. I merely discovered a secret. I felt that I should have a discussion with you. The bald man glanced at him with an appraising look and puzzlingly asked, "Secret? What secret?" "The Drifting Cloud Sect's fellow Daoist Han is likely a spy for the Mulan." He spoke without the slightest hesitation and slowly walked inside. The bald man involuntarily laughed and his face was filled with disbelief. "Spy? Could it be that your mind is unclear? Fellow Daoist Han had just slain a nascent soul spell warrior today. The thought is ridiculous. I know that Brother Lu might not believe it, but I have evidence. You'll know that I'm speaking the truth." This person sighed and bitterly smiled before summoning a jade slip into his hand with a flash of light. He then stepped forward and neared the large man. The bald man wore an expression of astonishment and stood up to face him. He then calmly took the jade slip into his hand. At the same time the bald man took the jade slip into his hand, his expression vastly changed and a fierce expression appeared in his eyes. In a flash of green light, the jade slip suddenly turned into a small emerald green snake. It bit the bald man's wrist with the speed of lightning. With an expression of shock, he couldn't even scream before he motionlessly collapsed onto the floor, his complexion turned a black violet. Joy flickered from the man's face and he muttered, "The twin-tailed jade serpent is truly as poisonous as its reputation. Is it no less inferior than the 10 Supremes' poison? After the bite, it robs even a nascent soul the power to escape. If the snake was able to fly, it'd be an incredibly powerful method of killing other cultivators." He then took a step forward to examine the corpse that was slowly melting. The small dark green snake released its fangs from the corpse and slid away, revealing the 2 slim tails on its back. Its 2 tails struck the earth and then flung itself into the palm of its master. It coiled around itself and hissed with its purple-black tongue, its eyes glowing with an eerie dark green light. At that moment, this person lightly waved his hand and took the corpse's storage pouch into his hand. He then excitedly searched the storage pouch with his spiritual sense as if he were looking for something in particular. A short moment later, this person softly whispered, "It can't be. Where is the command medallion? I clearly saw him place it in the storage pouch." He then resentfully turned the bag upside down and tossed its belongings onto the ground, forming a pile of various inferior magic tools and a few low-grade spirit stones. Once the man clearly saw what was on the ground, his complexion turned deathly pale and his body suddenly flashed with green light. Without another word, he shot towards the hall exit in a streak of light. A long sigh echoed through the hall. Soon, silver light flickered from every wall, enveloping them in waves of silver light and forming a huge barrier of light all around him. With a cold snort, the man continued without any intention of stopping. He slapped his waist and summoned a jet-black pangolin spirit beast, striking at the light that blocked his path. With a muffled bang, the spirit beast was repelled by the light barrier with the barrier completely unharmed. In the man's alarm, he suddenly gritted his teeth and spat out a blue trident from his mouth. In an instant, the magic treasure duplicated into 2 and combined together as a streak of large blue light before striking the light barrier. Then with a muffled explosion, the blue light was reflected 10 meters back before spinning to the ground. "There is no need for Brother Jiu to go through so much trouble." The bald man's voice echoed throughout the hall. As this place is the core of the grand formation of the Yellow Dragon Mountains, it is only natural for it to be guarded by the most powerful restrictions. Don't think that you'll be able to leave. The blue light faded away to reveal the controlling spirit sect Sgu Shuangpu. However, his complexion was deathly white and his gaze was brooding, barely able to keep his calm. So you didn't die, you used a flesh puppet. I had heard that there was a mysterious cultivator amongst the 9 Nations Union that was adept at refining flesh puppets identical to oneself, where one cannot even differentiate the true person from the puppet. I didn't actually expect this to be true. Then in a flash of white light, the bald man revealed himself from within the hall. He glanced at Gu Shuangpu from outside the barrier before turning his gaze to the ruined corpse on the floor. Brother Gu knows much about the affairs of our 9 Nations Union as expected, as well as the matter of doppelganger puppets. That is right, what you killed was a corpse puppet that I had controlled. Even a nascent soul cultivator such as yourself was unable to tell any difference from its exterior. Humph! Rubbish! If I hadn't used my spiritual sense to closely examine your doppelganger out of fear of being detected, I definitely wouldn't have been deceived. Besides, even if I meticulously cultivated the twin-tailed jade serpent for several hundreds of years, its incredibly vicious poison definitely shouldn't have been capable of killing a nascent soul cultivator alone. I originally planned only to use the serpent to heavily injure you, but I had mistakenly overestimated the toxicity of the snake upon seeing you perish in a single blow. It seems I've become arrogant. Gu Shuangpu spoke with an icy expression, but a trace of regret was betrayed from his eyes. The bald man emotionlessly said, "Hee. I had requested a puppet to be refined for me out of a moment's fancy. I didn't truly think that a dead corpse would actually be refined to my likeness. However, spending this corpse puppet to discover that Brother Gu was a traitor was well worth the spirit stones the puppet had cost." Gu Shuangpu's cheek twitched and grew silent for a spell. But a short moment later, he icily said, "From your tone, you seem to know that I would come find you and you had already prepared a substitute ahead of time. Could it be that you discovered something amiss after I arrived at the Yellow Dragon Mountains?" The bald man shook his head. "Of course not. How could I suspect an elder of the controlling spirit sect without cause or reason? I was merely given a warning from someone else. I originally felt unsure of the matter, but now it has been made certain." He then turned his head to the sides of the hall and shouted, "Fellow Daoist Han, Brother Ma, you may come out." When Gu Shuangpu heard this, he was no longer able to maintain his gloomy expression. Alarm was betrayed from his face. Then in a flash of yellow light from both sides of the hall, a calm Han Li and a grave old man Ma walked out. With a pained expression, the old man sorrowfully said, "I didn't expect that fellow Daoist Gu would actually do this. What kind of benefits did the Mulan offer you to do such a deranged thing?" Gu Shuangpu stared at the old man and coldly snorted. "Deranged? I was originally from the Mulan tribes. How could my decision possibly be deranged? You're a person from the Mulan." The party of cultivators couldn't help but reveal surprise. "Of course." A maddened expression appeared on Gu Shuangpu's face. "Did you believe that benefits were enough to rope in a nascent soul cultivator like me? You Heavenly South cultivators should realize how sparse cultivation resources are in the Mulan Plains. There are countless talented low-grade spell warriors that never progress in their cultivation due to a lack of spirit stones and medicine pills, and they turn to a pile of bones after only 100 years because they lack the optimal circumstances for cultivation. Why is that you Heavenly South cultivators were able to take such a good area, and a spell warriors must make do with a sparse few spirit stones to use? So long as the Mulan acquire the cultivation resources of the Heavenly South, in less than 100 years the number of spell warriors will double. With such vast strength, we'll be able to defeat the soaring tribe's immortals and rule over the entirety of the Mulan Plains." When Gu Shuangpu said that, the others couldn't help but glance at each other in dismay. Han Li expressionally asked, "Defeat the soaring tribe's immortals?" It seems the Mulan had suffered a decisive defeat by these immortals, and now a majority of the Mulan Plains are being held by these towards immortal masters. Is that why you've staked it all in order to invade the Heavenly South? How? How do you know of this? Gu Shuangpu was stunned for a moment before suddenly something came to his mind and he viciously glared at Han Li. "You eavesdropped on my sound transmissions with Sagela." Han Li expressionlessly said, "It seems Brother Gu had realized it quite quickly, but don't blame me. Who was it that told you to so brazenly sound transmissions in front of me? With my slightly superior spiritual sense, I was just able to listen to your voice transmissions and informed fellow Daoist Lu of the matter." With a pale complexion, Gu Shuangpu rigidly stared at Han Li and resentfully said, "Good, very good. All of my secrets are leaked. I've been concealed in the Heavenly South for so long, yet it can't be anything but unjust to fall to such a careless mistake. But to say that your spiritual sense is only slightly superior? Humph! Your esteemed self is far too modest. How could our secret voice transmission technique compare to common sound transmissions? Unless your spiritual sense is as strong as a late nascent soul cultivator, there was no other way you could have eavesdropped on my conversation. Old Man Ma shouted in alarm, late nascent soul stage. The bald man was also alarmed and glanced at Han Li with amazement. Han Li frowned. He didn't think that this matter would unintentionally reveal the strength of his spiritual sense. But soon, he eased his brow and instead wore a relaxed expression, leaving the bald man and Old Man Ma feeling skeptical of Jiyu Shuangpu's words. After all, it was a bit too outrageous for an early nascent soul cultivator to have a spiritual sense on the level of a late nascent soul cultivator. The bald man reluctantly turned his gaze away from Han Li and icily gazed at Jiyu Shuangpu inside the light barrier. Since we now know you are a spy, don't blame us for being ruthless. Although I wish to spare your life and hand you over to the enforcers of the Union, there is a great battle ahead of us. We do not have the option to keep you alive. Soon after, he flipped his hand and summoned a command medallion that flickered with silver light. He raised the command medallion into the air, shooting a beam of light at the barrier. The barrier cleanly absorbed the beam and began to flicker, suddenly shining with countless silver flowers, each vastly beautiful. Jiyu Shuangpu saw the silver flowers just like a poisonous insect and his expression grew unsightly. Without further thought, he quickly slapped several places around his body, placing several layers of various colored light around his body. At that same time, he pointed to the blue trident in front of it. It began to spin above his head and formed a barrier of blue light around him. Once the silver flowers began to rupture and fill the light barrier, the bald man turned around with disinterest and solemnly spoke to Han Li and Old Man Ma. Let us go, there's nothing good to see. Although his cultivation is high, he won't be able to endure the restrictions for long and will soon have his soul destroyed. We still have to deal with the aftermath. Although this person was a Mulan spy, he was still a controlling spirit sect elder. We will have much explaining to do to the Union. Seeing that the large man possessed such confidence in the Hall's restrictions, Han Li blinked but said nothing else. Old Man Ma also felt somewhat doubtful of the bald man's words and frowned. Han Li smiled and suddenly said, to tell the truth, although this matter is somewhat troublesome, there is no need to worry too much over it. Not daring to ignore Han Li given his previous accomplishments, the bald man hesitantly asked, what does Brother Han mean? Old Man Ma also looked at Han Li with astonishment. Han Li rubbed his chin and said, our alliance leaders should surely know something of the Mulan spies infiltrating into the heavenly south. They must have caught some in the past. So as long as this high-grade cultivator was a spy, the controlling spirit sect won't be able to do much about it. Since we all come from different alliances, most cultivators won't think that we had deliberately framed the controlling spirit sect elder. As such, we only have to explain ourselves and deliver the information we acquired from the Mulan. Once they've verified this information, no trouble should come of this. I believe the controlling spirit sect should had their own misgivings about Elder Jiyu by now. Surely fellow Daoist Jiyu wasn't able to perfectly conceal everything after so many years. And even if they don't, they should be able to find something suspicious from his past movements. The bald man unfurled his brow and suddenly revealed a white jade slip in his hand. He wore an odd expression and said, Brother Han's words are reasonable. I had also used a secret technique to record his previous words in a jade slip as well. We'll be able to use it as evidence when the time comes. After hearing Han Li's explanation and seeing the bald man's jade slip, Old Man Ma breathed a sigh of relief. That will do. It is a pity that fellow Daoist Bu wasn't able to come out and stand witness as his injuries were so severe that he had to conceal himself, but it won't pose a problem. Once that was said, the three had a more detailed discussion about the matter when hisses suddenly sounded out from the silver light barrier. The three were greatly surprised by this and they glanced at each other with bewilderment. Just as the bald man thought to take action, a huge explosion of flames ruptured from within the barrier. A green claw flew out and struck the light barrier like a bolt of lightning, causing it to fiercely tremble. What is this? He still has the strength to shock the restriction. The bald man was greatly alarmed and shouted with disbelief. He then formed an incantation gesture and struck the barrier with a white spell seal, causing the numerous flowers of light to cease, revealing the scene inside. The bald man and Old Man Ma felt their breaths turn cold. Han Li's expression was also sullen. Jiyu Shuangpu had disappeared, only to be replaced with a half-man, half-demon serpent monster. This monstrosity was wearing Jiyu Shuangpu's clothes, but its face and limb was entirely covered by green scales. Its 2 eyes were icily eerie and its 10 fingers were razor sharp. It also had 2-meter-long tails that were gently tapping the floor. The scaly face had clearly belonged to Gu Shuangpu. When it opened its mouth, its serpent tongue flickered and it uttered serpent hisses, much to the disgust and fear of those present. When Old Man Ma clearly saw the monster's appearance, his face turned deathly pale, and he flusteredly shouted, "This is the spirit fuse technique." He had turned into one with the twin-tailed jade serpent. When the bald man heard the old man, he also wore an expression of furious alarm. Spirit fuse technique? Isn't he that a lost secret technique? Does he not fear being banished from the cycle of reincarnation? Soon after, he rigidly stared at the serpentine monster as if it were a great enemy and hastily slapped his storage pouch. In a flash of silver light, the restriction command talisman appeared in his hand. The large man puffed a breath of spirit chi on the medallion before tossing it into the air. But just as he began to hurriedly utter an incantation, the monster inside the barrier began to take action. It sullenly swept its gaze past the 3 outside the barrier, and quickly flicked its tongue before splitting open its cheek and spitting out a purple-black liquid towards the 3. At that moment, the bald man saw this and ceased his incantation, pointing towards the command medallion instead. The medallion began to radiate with silver light and shot over 10 silver spell seals at the barrier, each absorbed seal releasing a dragon-esque cry. The barrier then flashed violently several times and grew thicker. And the countless silver flow within the barriers then began to condense at the top. When the black-purple liquid struck the barrier, a small portion of the light barrier instantly turned black, and soon the color spread to nearly an area of 3 meters. A malicious expression appeared on the serpent monster's face. At that same moment, its 2 tails struck at the floor, launching it forward in a streak of green light and fiercely striking at the barrier with its claws. With a bang, a large hole was torn through the hardy barrier as if it were paper. The monster was delighted by the sight of this and its body blurred as it attempted to escape. When the bald man saw this, he wore an expression of horror and spat out a white rod from his mouth, forming a curtain of light around his body. Old Man Ma had also done the same. With a nervous expression, he spat out his ruler magic treasure and covered his body in a layer of light. The 2 clearly understood how fearsome was an early nascent soul cultivator that used the spirit fuse technique. Let alone its techniques, its cultivation should be on par with a mid-nascent soul cultivator. When the 2 saw the monster was about to escape, they naturally planned to fight it through a battle of attrition. They wouldn't take the initiative to strike until it struck first. But at that moment, Han Li sighed with a helpless tone and decided to take action. With a faint blur, he closed the short distance and appeared in front of the tear in the barrier. When the serpentine monster was just about to escape and saw Han Li blocking its way, a malicious gaze flickered from its eyes. Without a single trace or warning, it opened its mouth and spat out purple-black venom. "Be careful! Fellow Daoist Han, quickly dodge!" The bald man and Old Man Ma both shouted in alarm. It wasn't because of any concern from familiarity, but that they needed all the strength they could muster to fight against this monster, not to mention the looming threat of the Spell Warrior's army. Seemingly ignoring the 2's shouts of alarm, Han Li stared at the oncoming purple-black liquid and an odd expression flickered from his eyes. With a deliberate raise of his arm, he bent his fingers, covering them in a layer of flickering blue flames, and stretched his hand forward to grab the poison. The 2 other nascent soul cultivators felt their heart drop at the sight of this. As for the serpentine monster, it spat out another blob of poison without any hesitation. A nearly indistinct sneer appeared on Han Li's face and blue light shined from his eyes. An eruption of light suddenly appeared between Han Li and the monster. The brilliant light wildly flickered several times before quickly dimming. The bald man and Old Man Ma hastily blinked and glanced over. What they saw left them in shock. They simply saw the serpentine monster wear an expression of rapt delight just as it was about to escape the light barrier, but its body was now covered in sparkling crystal, turning into a blue ice sculpture. As for the venom, it had turned into a slim thread of ice that emerged from its mouth, spanning about a meter long. At an unknown time, Han Li had appeared behind the monster and had placed his blue flaming hand on the back of the monster's neck. Han Li took his hand off of its neck and stared at the ice sculpture. As expected, this is the first time the spirit-fused monster has come to life. Although it was quite intelligent, its experience was far too shallow. There was nothing to be afraid of. He then raised his other hand, and a dense arc of golden lightning shot out from his palm and struck the ice sculpture, swapping a slim net of golden lightning around it. The blue radiance and the golden light fused together before promptly exploding, turning the ice sculpture into inch-sized chunks. With blue specks of light filling the air, a fist-sized black-purple object had shot out, but it was caught by the golden net. Inhuman wails soon began to scream from it. A stern expression flickered from Han Li's face. Han Li closed the hand that emitted the lightning and caused the net to constrict, rupturing it into golden brilliance and causing it to disappear from view. With a screech, the golden radiance turned the demon nascent into a cloud of smoke that soon scattered. It was said that the spirit fuse technique was an incredibly vicious ancient devil Dao technique. Of course, the demon nascent that resulted from it was likewise incredibly vulnerable to the divine devilbane lightning and was quickly destroyed, incapable of using instant movement to escape. In the distance, the bald man had dropped his jaw and couldn't muster the force to open his mouth. As for Old Man Ma, his face appeared calm enough, but his eyes were wide open and he couldn't bring himself to say anything. Han Li had already anticipated that the two would feel shocked, and he maintained his calm appearance. He summoned the storage pouch on the floor and the blue trident into his hands and then observed them with his spiritual sense before tossing them to the bald man. Han Li glanced at the two and slowly said, although we did kill him, we should give his magic treasure and storage pouch back to the controlling spirit sect in an untouched stage. That way, the controlling spirit sect won't have anything to say. When the bald man heard Han Li speak, he instantly recovered from his shock and immediately agreed. Brother Han's words are very reasonable. We'll do as you suggested. Old Man Ma's mouth moved several times, but no words were able to come out. Rather, he put away his ruler magic treasure with an embarrassed expression. Han Li's killing the black-robed man could be attributed to carelessness and luck. But this time, he managed to empty-handedly kill the spirit-fused monster that possessed cultivation on par with a mid-nascent soul cultivator, an opponent that was beyond their capabilities. Without any prior discussion, they both felt that the drifting cloud sect's Elder Han could possibly have the abilities to deal with any opponent under late-nascent soul stage. When this thought came to their mind, the two were unable to keep a calm appearance. Han Li indifferently said, since the matter has been resolved, I will be going back to take a rest. If the spell warriors return, please call for me. Brother Han, go ahead. We will naturally oversee this area. The bald man's words unconsciously carried a tone of respect. Han Li smiled and waved his arm before leaving the hall. The previous display of celestial ice flames and divine devilbane lightning was a force measure. If he hadn't taken the initiative to attack, the serpentine monster would escaped and caused no end of problems for the future. The bald man and the old man Ma would found it difficult to bar the monster's way. Moreover, he didn't feel the need to conceal his true abilities once he condensed a nascent soul. His current circumstances were much different than when he was in the scattered star seas. He had to keep himself hidden at the time because his cultivation was meager and he was in an unfamiliar area. If the wrong people noticed him, he would be hunted down. But now that he condensed a nascent soul, he now walked in the upper echelon of the cultivation world, and since there were only a sparse few that would pose much threat to him, he didn't feel much apprehension about revealing himself. Moreover, given the current invasion of the Mulan, it would be impossible to continue hiding his abilities. At the very least, the Ghost Spirit sect and Marquis Nanlong's party should know of his true abilities from what he had displayed at their treasure hunt in the Mulan plains. As such, he may as well reveal his true strength so he could intimidate any small fry that plotted against him. Otherwise, if any fellow cultivators believed him to be weak, it would provoke some needless problems. Of course, Han Li wouldn't easily reveal all of his killing moves. As Han Li pondered this, he also recalled the strange feeling from the purple apex flames when he enveloped the demon nascent. Just a moment ago, he had used the purple apex flames together with the celestial ice flames in order to freeze the monster in an instant. Then when he recalled the purple apex flames, he felt it become somewhat unstable. It seemed using the full might of these flames required a certain level of higher cultivation, as he had expected. With a feeling of self-mockery, Han Li slowly walked towards his residence. When Old Man Ma saw Han Li leave, he wryly smiled and said, Brother Lu, it seems we've made a misjudgment. Fellow Daoist Han's abilities are miraculously profound. His strength is far beyond ours. A trace of admiration appeared on the bald man's face. That's right. Although his cultivation is at early nascent soul stage, with that golden lightning and blue flames, he could beat back even mid-nascent soul stage cultivators. Old Man Ma smiled and said, however, this matter turned out for the better for us. With such a powerful ally, we will have nothing to fear from the invading spell warriors. That makes sense. The bald man nodded, but soon he frowned and said, however, while I haven't heard of this blue flame before, I've faintly heard of golden lightning before, but I can't recall what it is. Does Brother Ma have an idea? The old man pondered for a moment and felt a faint chill. None. This was also the first time I've ever seen golden lightning. This technique is so incisive, even a nearly incorporeal nascent soul was unable to escape it. Let us leave it be. Regardless of what great abilities fellow deist Han cultivate, it is a fortunate matter for us. The bald man frowned as if unwilling to speak further of the matter and said, we still must talk about the matters for tomorrow. Old Man Ma was stunned and bafflingly asked, what do you mean by tomorrow's matters? A cold glint appeared in the bald man's eyes and he sinisterly said, since the Mulan set off a spy to break the formation, why don't we beat them at their own game? Something immediately came to Old Man Ma's mind. Brother Lu, you mean? It's quite simple. Old Man Ma and the old man suddenly spoke in a whisper, their voices faintly echoing throughout the hall. A short moment later, the bald man widely laughed as if rejoicing at the brilliance of his own plan. On noon of the second day, just as the burning sun rose to the center of the sky, the beats of rumbling war drums traveled through the air. The Spell Warrior army gradually made their way from across the horizon, this time bringing along a huge monster at the center of their ranks. From a single glance it seemed to be a huge rhino that was enlarged by several tens of times. At the top of its nose was a lustrous blue horn that was over 3 meters long. The beast's extremely huge body was covered in a layer of glowing black battle armor that had talisman characters floating above it. It appeared extremely precious. Not to mention its huge size, its 4 feet seemed to be treading entirely on blue clouds in an extremely nimble display. It didn't appear clumsy in the slightest. In addition, there was a woman sitting on the beast, a beauty in her prime, her feet bare and her appearance delicate, but there was an hostile aura faintly emitted from her eyes as her cold gaze wandered around. She wore simple and short dark green robes. Ku Yao and the shriveled spell warrior were closely following at the side of the huge beast as if paying respect to the woman. Yi! Before they grew close to the yellow dragon mountains, the green-clothed woman yelped in astonishment. Ku Yao couldn't help but ask, what? Has Master Le discovered something? An odd expression appeared on her expression and she slowly said, yes, there is something strange. Could there be a change in plans? Has that person failed? The shriveled spell warrior grew still and worry appeared on his face. No, necessarily. You two should go and take a look, the woman indifferently said. Soon after, she closed her eyes and remained silent. The shriveled spell warrior and Ku Yao looked at other and bafflingly spread their spiritual sense forward. Soon, the two wore astonished expressions. With great amazement, Ku Yao bafflingly said, what's going on? The mist has already scattered. Didn't we discuss that the restriction was supposed to break halfway through the attack so that we can exterminate all the cultivators? What happened for the restriction to suddenly disappear? The shriveled spell warrior hesitantly said, I don't know. First, let us advance and take a proper look before we decide what to do. With that discussed, the woman on the huge beast remained silent. As a result, the spell warrior army continued forward. However, the warnings of the shriveled spell warrior made sure that their army was especially vigilant. Nothing out of the ordinary occurred when the spell warrior army finished making their way over the short distance to where they were yesterday. The endless sea of dark green mist no longer existed, only to reveal the mountains and their various jade platforms on each mountaintop. However, the fine and exquisite structures were now ruined and scorched black, with a few of them releasing smoke. With the addition of the silence looming over the mountain range and the lack of any other people, it made for a miserable sight. The spell warrior army split into two as the green-robed woman slowly moved her beast forward. They glanced at the beautiful figure on the huge beast with respect and kept silence rather than show their ordinary display of restlessness. Ku Yao and the shriveled spell warrior followed after her. The woman glanced at the scene before her with bright wandering eyes. After a moment of silence, she brushed her hair back and a cold smile appeared on her face. The shriveled spell warrior bewilderedly said, it's no good. Although the mist has stopped, there are still restrictions present that are blocking my spiritual sense from looking any further. Ku Yao puzzlingly said, that's right. What we're seeing currently is possibly only an illusion. If that person has truly succeeded, he should have joined us by now. With a cold voice, the woman said, then you mean to say that we will simply stand here and do nothing? Of course not, the shriveled spell warrior explained, we will only need to be more careful. It is possible that person had only succeeded in part and had escaped after being detached. As a result, the other cultivators must have abandoned this place and made a retreat.